Hello, and welcome to the Schmidt List, the podcast for people dedicated to managing successful projects, developing impactful products, and building engaged teams. And now, here's your host, Kurt Schmidt.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of the Schmidt List. On today's show, I'm talking to Nick Tietz, former Director of Innovation for Lifetime Fitness, and now the co-founder and Chief Digital Officer at Vitals. Nick and I talk about the importance of emotional intelligence and user experience and 3 simple questions that can unlock an amazing amount of data about your users. Stay tuned after the interview for some special announcements. And now, here's my conversation with Nick. Nick, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah, of course. No, I'm excited to have you here. So your background is in user experience design and product development. Tell me a little bit about how you tripped and fell into user experience design. Was it a big plan that you couldn't wait to become a designer, or how did that happen?
Well, that's it's interesting you say it that way. So I started more in the video production and motion graphics realm, and I kept talking to clients about, well, why do you want to make this video? And then all of a sudden the internet happened, and I was like, why do you want to make a video on DVD when they have this thing called a website and the internet? Right. And then YouTube quickly came. And then as I kept doing that work, I went, I don't really want to learn Flash. I'm just going to keep doing motion graphics. But I kept saying, this could be a lot cooler if it was going to be an interactive piece. As I kept moving up the strategy ladder, it became apparent that there were other ways to do this. And I just started building websites without realizing it. I partnered up with a designer. We'd go connect with developers. We'd have to tell them what we wanted. And essentially, I was doing UX for probably 2.5 years, not realizing I was doing user experience or information architecture, as it was called back then.
Right. And so from there, you went over to the Nerdery. And when you were there, they were just starting a user experience practice, right? And I remember when I was there, you were a big part of kind of promoting it and getting it off the ground, not only with clients. So tell me about some of those first interactions where you were going to clients and explaining to them what user experience design was. What were some of those tactics you used?
One of the things that we did, and I think this made user experience a little different at the Nerdery, was that because we were a development-first shop, and we didn't want to get into design or a lot of design-heavy work, we took a different approach, kind of a hands-off approach to doing user experience. And that really actually forced us to attack the problem in a different way, which was, how do we understand what the business requirements are for this website? What are they actually trying to do as a business? And then how do we make sure that the users can accomplish that with the software we're going to build? And so it's kind of funny when you describe it that way. You're basically describing user experience, but we didn't use any of those words with our clients.
Right.
And as we'd unpack the work sessions that we would do, we would start by saying, okay, so, well, if you want us to build this piece of software, then we should probably sit down and just really quickly take a couple hours and understand what you're really trying to do with the software so we can design it the right way and develop it. And out of those sessions, we would come up with the user requirements, the system requirements, the business requirements, and then we'd get into the design for it.
And so, wireframes, the idea of wireframes back then was pretty revolutionary in terms of it. Did you ever have any fun or interesting experiences presenting wires to clients? Like, were they like, what is this? Where's the design?
I think, one of the things that helped us, and I think this is something that, a lot of, either younger designers or design agencies, they fall into a trap because they have to create the presentation layer so quickly. And because we said that we weren't going to do that, it actually made it easy for us to come in and say, we're just going to come up with the framework that is then going to get colored in. It's then going to get designed. And not to say that isn't an integral process that goes together, and it should.
Yeah.
Because our business model was, we don't do the design, it made it really easy to help frame things up for the client so they knew what they were looking at. We're just trying to define the structure for the functionality for the site. And again, it actually caused us to work a different way when presenting ideas back to the client.
No, I think that's great because, back then, the process was pretty simple and straightforward. And I think today, in some areas, it's gotten super complex. But nowadays, I see, a big push on lean, obviously, is a big part of it. So I just recently did a podcast with Jeff Godelf, the author of the book Lean UX. And one of my questions was, can we get any leaner? Are we at maximum lean? In your opinion, when you're working in design and working with teams and software developers, how are you managing the amount of overhead as part of the process? How do you personally make those determinations?
One of the things that I've always tried to do when working with the client to make sure that we're doing the right things is, starting small, making sure that we really understand the business problem that we're trying to solve, and then making sure that we quickly understand what is their customer trying to solve, whoever that customer is. I'm probably saying it incorrectly here, but to me, that customer could be another system. And if we understand what the problem is with the other half, then we can make sure that we're designing within the context of both, systems or, the business problem and the user problem that we're trying to match with. If we can clarify that and simplify that to its most basic elements, and what I mean by that is, can we draw a picture that simply illustrates the problem we're trying to solve? Then I think we can figure out how many resources or how much process do we need, to solve the problem.
If you were somebody who was maybe a UX designer and you're part of a team of UX designers and you have a lot of process, how would you coach somebody to champion the idea of getting leaner without creating more holes in the process?
There are a lot of tools out there. Tools, methods, processes. I think it's important that you find the right ones based on what you're trying to do. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all. And I know that's cliche to say, but at the same time, I think it's very true. It's important that you're using the right process matched with the problem you're trying to solve and the speed at which you're trying to solve the problem. If you're trying to get something done in a week, then you probably want to think about what can you get done in a sprint. And then you're going to start looking up sprint tools. If you're trying to design a new system, well, depending on how complex the system is, then you're going to need some system tools and some other modeling tools, and you'll probably need to do some more research. So, and then as soon as you start saying that, well, then you're going to, your bag of tools needs to get a little bit bigger.
If I'm a designer, maybe I'm been doing this for a while and I'm looking for the next big thing, right? I'm looking for maybe my next rung on the ladder, or I want to move from junior to senior, or I want to move to a lead. What skill sets would you stress to that person besides obviously becoming even better at design, but what other skill sets are important for that person to learn?
Study and understand the different ways to, actively listen, interview, and engage with, the users of whatever you're designing. So if that means that you're doing an interview with them in person, if you're, coming in and observing how they interact with other objects, again, you're always listening. And when you put together a prototype, whether it's a paper prototype, a clickable prototype, something really high fidelity, but really listen to what they're saying and what they're doing, not what you hope they would say or hope they would do. Once you start doing that, it's gonna send you down a path that may not be successful for whatever the problem is you're trying to solve. The second thing that I think designers need to work on, in addition to listening, is their EQ. Right? It's not IQ; it's EQ. We need to continue to work on increasing our emotional intelligence to read between the lines, to not get sucked into somebody's biases, to be able to listen beyond the words that they're saying, and the better that we can understand it and then unpack it as we listen to all the different users that we are either observing or listening or that are using our software that we've designed, that's what's really going to help you as a designer, get to that next level or that next state. And that's really what organizations are looking for when they're designing a solution, is they want something that's intuitive, that's easy to use, and that requires little to no instruction.
One of the questions I ask a lot of user experience designers when they're on the show is how they're balancing the needs of the user versus the needs of the business, right? I hear many UX designers railing against the business about how they're neglecting the poor user left out in the cold, shuddering, starving for good interaction. But yet the business still is a business, and we've got to find ways to service the business to make sure that it is able to maintain being a business so it can actually provide something to that customer, right? What are some of the ways that you would either ask somebody to focus on to keep that balance?
There's always a push and a pull with this. I believe very strongly that you need to start with the business. You need to understand what the business is really trying to do. I've found a lot of times that the business is often doing, and I know I'm using business in the generic sense, but the business is often doing things that then when you get down to it, they aren't even things they wanted to do. They just ended up doing these things because either they thought they could make some money at it, they believed that they could do some good with it.
Yeah, it would have some impact.
Right. And so if we can understand that first, because without a business, then there's no, depending on what the business is, there's no revenue. So if you just get rid of that, then there's no reason for that business to exist. Then there's no reason for doing anything, right? You can probably reword that, or there's probably a completely better way to say it. But anyway, my point being is, what is the business trying to do? What is its purpose? What are the business goals? And what does the business need to do to be successful so that it can serve its customers, right? That's where I always start. And then it really opens the door to say, okay, great. So who are your customers again? Like, what are they trying to do? What are the problems that they're trying to solve on a daily basis that also intersect with that business that that you do? And if you can understand those things and then serve those customers in, either new, novel, unexpected, delightful ways, lots of different ways to say it, your customers will resonate even more with your product or service, which creates more loyalty, creates more, love, creates more excitement, turns them into raving fans. And in the group of customers, there are customers that are, frustrated with your product or service, and which is, as a designer, we often go out and we'll research and we'll find those frustrations. I think then the question becomes, as you present these facts back to the business, is, well, how important are these customers to you?
Right.
And what do you need to do to win them over? And the business needs to decide what they want to do to, are they worried about losing them? Because what I would say is in some cases they're not.
Sure.
And they're just going to keep moving on. But I found that the businesses that are really concerned with all of their customers seems like they are generally doing better. And when I say better, meaning they're more profitable. They provide, they provide great service. They meet expectations more often, which drives loyalty, word of mouth, and again, makes them a more profitable company. That's not in every case, but I would say it happens more often than not.
I've found that mixing innovation and user experience can sometimes be at odds, because you want to surprise and delight people, but you also have to have a good understanding of what they're actually going to do with the product once they have it, right? And I hear a lot of people talking about it, and I hate to use cliches, but I'm going to use it anyways, that we're kind of living in an experience economy now. And so working with a company like Lifetime, which is very much about experience, how did you find being able to kind of match all the tools and methods and things in user experience, but apply them with developing innovative either campaigns or products? How did you find that balance?
So I think one of the things that